nobody should be growing anything that hasn't been validated. And this is not a you thing, this is a me thing. So if you're saying growth, by definition, you and I are saying it's been validated, there's signs of product market fit. And all product market fit is a test of retention with a very specific segment.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the author of Growth Hacking for Dummies. He helps startup founders and heads of growth break through plateaus by aligning product, marketing, and data to drive sustainable growth. Anuj Adhiya with Growth Hacking for Dummies. So excited to have you here. How you doing?
Couldn't be happier to be here and nerd out some more with you.
So tell us more about your journey. What were you doing before that led you into what you're doing now?
Yeah, this is sort of an accidental career for me because I have degrees in chemistry and biochemistry, and I'm doing startup growth, which sounds like those shouldn't make sense. But the way I was told that the two are connected was actually by Sean Ellis, who is the godfather of growth hacking. And he said that all this fancy growth stuff is nothing but applying the scientific method to product and marketing. So in school, if you were in chem lab and you did those color changing experiments with the drops, if you know how to do that and you remember how to do that, congratulations, you know how to do growth. You try stuff, you see what doesn't work, you use that information to find out what does work, and then you do more of that. That's growth and growth hacking in a nutshell for you. It was a completely accidental career for me because I had one mad moment, thought I'd wanted to found a startup, knowing nothing about startups at all, including not knowing what marketing meant, what sales meant, MVP. I knew none of that because I didn't come from this world. And started the journey of learning who to follow on Twitter, and Sean was one of them. And September 30th, 2013 was the day my life changed because of all the thousands of tweets I could have seen that day, I see one from Sean that says, launching a thing called growthhackers.com, come check it out. I click on it and voila, it's a community discussing startup-y things. Like, this is great. And I start to engage in the community, not knowing anything, even how important it is for people to engage in a brand new community that needs traction, and not knowing that it was a small community and Sean himself was involved. You're the growth person, and you start to get sort of recognition by people you look up to, and suddenly this thing becomes a habit. And a year later, I'm the most active member on the community and get asked to moderate it just because that's what I was doing already in my free time. And a year later, I was just having a random conversation with Sean, and basically it was just supposed to be a 15-minute catch up, and it turned into an hour and a half long call about maybe why I should be joining the team. And we have this call, we both sleep on it. We could come back the next day and we're like, how do you feel about it? I'm like, great. So I stumbled into my first startup and first growth gig with the guy that coined the phrase growth hacking, but it was all organic. There was nothing planned about it. I was just interested in the topic. And so I didn't have to fake engagement or interest, but that clearly translated into something that worked and helped the community as well. So when I joined, it was transitioning from this passion project into a full-on business. And that's what really happened over the next 4 years. It became this community that morphed into everything from events to a book to online training, a SaaS product, and became an actual revenue generating business. And there were days I was pinching myself. I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. It was a lot of fun. And Sean's whole thing was there is only one growth hack, because he gets asked the question all the time. And I'm sure every person who does growth gets asked, what's the magic bullet, right? And there is none. But if there is one, it is your rate of learning, because that's really, all things being equal, the startup that learns fastest about what works and doesn't work about their audience is the one that's going to execute their competition and win. So it was his mandate for us is, I don't care what you do, I need you to run at least 3+ tests a week. And I was there 4 years, so do the math. That was a lot of tests.
At least 158 per year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Man, super cool. But you didn't even expect to go into this. You were just genuinely helping this community by engaging in the posts and being as helpful as you could. And that kind of hobby and passion turned into a job opportunity and more opportunities. So now you've built some products online that are making money. You mentioned both the book and SaaS. Are you focused on your own business, or is your business just helping the other businesses?
Yeah, so since maybe late 2020, early 2021, I've been consulting. because like just being in that community opened out a lot of doors for me, including the opportunity to write the book, including many other full-time roles I didn't have to interview for. Just doors got opened, people knew me, and got the chance to mentor people. So at places I never envisioned, like Harvard Innovation Labs or Techstars or other accelerators. And that's when I started to realize that a lot of these questions are the same. And maybe there's something else I could do to make my dent in the startup failure rate, given all the people out there that have all the experience and knowledge that people like you, me, and others have. It's kind of stupid that the startup failure rate is still as high as it is.
Right.
Right.
You would
So
think with all the access to resources and other business owners who are willing to lend an ear or a little bit of advice, you would expect the failure rate to be lower.
exactly, but it's not, right? And clearly there's nuances there in terms of the demographics that this applies to. That was also part of the reasoning behind the book was like, here's a way to scale impact a little bit, or go and work with an accelerator and get to work with more than one startup at a time. And the consulting was more my way of keeping myself current with what's new and what's happening, what I can do with what I'm learning today. Because let's face it, given everything that's happening, and now since the last 2 years with AI coming into the mix, I feel obsolete every week,
It's changing so quickly, it's hard to keep up.
right? And I'm constantly trying to find ways, and consulting is just one way to keep myself on my toes and say, okay, what's the latest I can learn and bring to the table and raise the odds of success somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is your story is just a testament to whether you have experience in a certain field or not. If you have this always be learning mindset and be willing to be helpful, you can become an expert in a brand new field and bring a new perspective and help a lot of people. And suddenly, like you said, these doors are opening for you. It's not like you were searching them out. If you kind of put yourself into this mindset, suddenly the doors are going to open and it's up to you if you want to walk through them. And you decided, hey, I'm going to walk through it and I'm going to run with it.
Totally, you're absolutely right. With you don't have to have experience thing, because I noticed this when I first got on to growth hackers, and when that lesson actually hit me, is just by spending all the time I did in the community, for a while actually became the living brain of the community. I knew everything that was posted, and so I would see these new discussions happen, and without having gotten my fingers dirty with anything practical with growth, my value add was saying, hey, I saw an article 2 weeks back that said the same thing, or I saw one that said the exact opposite. And just that ability to connect dots and say, okay, here's something complementary, or here's something that's saying the opposite. So I think is sort of proves your point out that you really don't have to know much, but just immersing yourself in something allows you to see patterns that other people don't. Great
Absolutely.
starting point.
Absolutely. A lot of businesses who are trying to grow and scale, how do we kind of fix that? What are they doing wrong? And what should our attention be focused on?
How much time do we have? But I'll give you the most common things I see, because now clearly most startups fail before product market fit, right? And there's a lot written about the most common causes of failure, or you build the wrong thing, or you build something nobody wants. And all of those are true. But what they don't say, I think, is that all of that is a function of learning the wrong thing at the wrong time. And that's one big thing, is because there's an order to things and there's a context to things. There'll be some influencer on LinkedIn who'll say something, and people will follow that stuff, not realizing that that does not apply to their context. And this is especially true of first time founders who don't come from this world, but don't know better, and then just follow what some big name says, or something that sounded good, or sounded like, oh, if we don't do this, we'll be left behind. So I think that's a huge piece for me, is just learning the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I'll throw out a resource for this as well. A book I must have recommended to at least 200 founders is Running Lean by Ash Maurya. And it's up to its third version right now. But that's a great book, and probably one of the best books I've read for a first time founder wanting to raise their odds of hitting product market fit or learning quickly. There's nothing there, because you learn the right thing in the right order.
Excellent. Thank you.
And the second thing, which is tied to all of this and relates to something we spoke about earlier, it is that rate of learning. Because that doesn't change no matter what, because you have very little money resource at that time. And if you're serious about this, your pace of learning needs to be quick for you to understand. And so one of my favorite questions, and this applies to pre or post product market teams, is are we smarter this week than we were last week? And that doesn't have to be these earth shattering insights. It's just we should be doing something different or something more every week because that's how you build momentum on things. Cannot answer at an individual level, at least, I'm smarter because I learned what not to do, which is a lot of what you learn is I'm just shouldn't do any of this anymore. Great. But then what else should you do? So either you learned something that told you do more of it, or you learned something that says don't do any more of this, do something else. At the very least, that's
Yes.
what you should have learned every week. Apply that construct to everybody on the team. That is how a team builds true momentum because that is actual learning happening at a team wide scale, helping and feeding back to the team as to, hey, this person learned X, this person learned Y. All of us should be smarter now, not just you as the CEO or you as the founder doing the learning while everybody else does whatever the hell they feel like.
Yes, because they're just kind of running in all different directions without clarity.
Correct. Both of these pieces, I think, have to come together. You have to understand what is our focus right now so you learn the right thing at the right time, and then build momentum towards that with testing, experimentation, what it is, so you can be smarter every week.
Yes, absolutely. And when people are trying to find that product market fit and validate their product, I see a lot of people failing by spending all their time building their new SaaS or their new app or their new product or service. And they haven't even asked their potential target market, do you want this? Would you pay money for this? Is this a need? Is this going to solve any of your problems? And oftentimes they spent so much time trying to make it fit to an audience and they end up going back to square one thinking the product wasn't good enough when really they maybe just need to try a different audience. So it's something with scalable acquisition I think is important as well as there's all different channels and we can do social media, we can do more organic, we can do SEO, we can do paid ads. Sure, it's nice to have a multi-channel approach and do some experiments, but over time we're going to get some data back and we're going to learn some channels were not as profitable, they didn't bring anything in. How do you kind of look at what's working versus not what's working versus scaling your growth?
Sure. Because you just said the G word, I'm going to say something that's a pet peeve of mine. Nobody should be growing anything that hasn't been validated. So, like a cat with standing up when people use the growth word before product market fit, because you're not growing anything, then you're just validating.
Yes.
And this is not a you thing, this is a me thing, right? So, if you're saying growth, by definition, you and I are saying it's been validated, there's signs of product market fit. And all product market fit is a test of retention with a very specific segment. That's all it is. So if you have now a bunch of people that keep coming back week after week, you have to use that information to help you grow. And I'll come back to that in a second because the most common thing I see is, oh, product market fit, let's blow this thing up. Let's run a bunch of ads. We're going to go viral on TikTok, TechCrunch, product hunt launches, whatever. And that's absolutely the wrong approach because none of those have been validated as approaches that you should be using. Instead, what is a better approach is to understand more about sort of the kind of person that finds the most value. And you literally ask people this question: what kind of person would benefit most from this product? And record how people describe themselves. Because you might think it's a social media marketer or a product manager or a life cycle marketer or a CEO. That may not be how they describe themselves. So you want the words. And I think this is one of the most underrated aspects of starting up marketing growth is language. That people respond to language that they feel mirrored in. Why do we laugh at certain jokes? It's because it's our sense of humor, right? Why do we respond to certain Super Bowl ads versus not others? It's literally they're speaking our language, right? So language is really important to start to tease out. And I think asking the question of what kind of person gets to not only the language, but tactically, if you're going to target people, you're going to target people like that. That's how you build your Facebook audiences or whatever it is. Don't just randomly say, I'm going to target tech entrepreneurs who are in their 30s. That's meaningless.
Right. And we can't grow or scale ads or any sort of marketing if we don't understand the audience or who we're trying to target, especially if that same audience that we're assuming is titled themselves a certain way, they're actually quite different and your targeting would have been way off and you're not actually reaching the right people anymore.
So that's one. The next thing I want to ask is, how did you even find out about us? And some of these may have been personal connections. Somebody told me, hey, I saw a post on LinkedIn. But if you were to ask all the people, I'm sure there'll be this Pareto that will show up with at least one or two channels that are bigger than others. Guess what? That's your order of testing channels. You don't need to do TikTok and LinkedIn ads or literally follow what people, have found you with right now and
Just
do more
stick
of
with
that.
what works. Just ask them.
Absolutely. Because anybody who spent any time in this space knows what a total cluster attribution is. So it's like, just forget about it. Just ask people. You don't have to be exact about it. Get trends, double down on those. So that's second. And the third question I like to ask then is, so what's the primary benefit you found? Because again, these are people who keep coming back, right? So clearly they find some benefit in it. But you need to understand what it is. How do they describe the benefit? Which again goes back to language. Because for me, this is the holy trinity of all marketing. Who do you target? With what message? In what channel? Right?
Nailed it. That's the trinity of marketing. We need those three areas.
Correct. And so there's no need to break your head or literally ask your people and ask them to use their words.
There is
And
a pot of gold just waiting at the end of the rainbow. And we often
it
get
almost feels
distracted. The answer was here the whole time. It was right under my nose. And we almost feel stupid for knowing or forgetting that. Like, oh, wow, I do have a list of customers. I should really solicit their feedback to get their thoughts on.
Right. So now you have something that you have some learning around that you can test against. Because I think people want to move straight into something. They want to do scale and profitability at the same time. And you really can't. Because again, product market fit by definition is with smaller numbers, right? So what you're trying to do after that is say, okay, I found these many people like this. How many more can I find? Now it's about scale in terms of pure numbers. But it's only if you can get that working, like, okay, now I can repeatedly get more people and reliably so week after week or month after month. Great. Now can I do this profitably? Once I've learned how to get them in the door in the first place. And all of this again goes back to there's an order to things.
Yeah. And if we're jumping ahead and kind of missing steps, this is something within the buyer's journey. They might experience some friction or confusion, and they can't quite understand what it is they're buying or how it's going to help them. So they kind of fall off, and you're never going to get them to convert and keep them there. That retention is going to fall off.
I'm glad you mentioned this because I hear this all the time. Found product market fit. And of course, some VC told them or asked them about how many users do you have? How many downloads do you have? How many signups do you have? That's the absolute wrong question because acquisition is a solved problem. There are no secret channels. There's no users on Mars that only we know about, right? All the channels are known. It's just we aren't experts in them. And my bias is, okay, you're not an expert. Whatever budget you have, go hire the best person you can, freelancer, whatever, that lives and breathes that channel for you. There's no reason for you to waste time making mistakes that have already been made and learnings that have already been learned, right? Just go hire somebody and solve. So acquisition is really a solved problem. What is unique about every product is retention. And that's really the question a VC should be asking a startup is not how many signups do you have? What is your retention rate over time? Because that is the business I want to invest in that shows strong retention at that early stage. And so the reason I bring this up, because you said exactly the right thing, is that if you haven't gotten good learning around the buyer's journey before you start pouring gas, you might as well just give me the money. Why are you wasting it? I tell founders this all the time, like, give me $1 million. I promise you, I will get 1 million people to show up to your site tomorrow. Can't promise you even one. And that is the trick, right? And so there is this stage after you believe you have product market fit and between really pouring gas on things where you have to set the stage for growth, where you do exactly what you're saying, because product market fit just means I have value. You have not understood the best way to deliver this value yet. And you need to figure this bit out, right? So that's everything to do with a first experience that you put people through. Because now you validated the audience, like, okay, let me put more of this audience through different versions of this first experience. Because if I put them through that experience, let me now see what my retention rate looks like over time and what can I expect as users. And if people stay for this long, maybe I can get these many users to pay whatever their amount is. So I start to get some signal. So now when I pour gas on everything, once I've validated this, now I can say, if I get 1,000 people, I know 40% of them are going to hang out for at least 1 week. I know that's going to go down to 20% in week 2, but it's going to stay between 50 and 20% for at least 3 months after, right? Now, so this is why I think Sean's words were so resonant with me. It's all about the scientific method and validation And somebody else way smarter than me said that growth is nothing but retaining product market fit over time. And I never thought about it that way.
All too often I see people focusing on trying to get new leads, the top of the funnel. They're just like, I just need to get more visibility, more eyes, more people into the funnel. And they don't realize what's sitting right there in the middle is the middle of the funnel where people become that customer, and they're either going to become a non-customer or they're going to become a promoter of your service, and they're going to become a referral partner. That is where the money lies. And it's like, focus on their experience, that first time user. How do we get them to stay a bit longer and have a better experience versus trying to capture a brand new person?
I think most people default to assuming top of funnel is their problem. It may be, I'm not discounting it, but the problem is that most people haven't done the math of their growth and haven't back engineered that if I need to make this amount of revenue in this much time, and if my sales cycle is how many ever months and my average selling price is okay, based on that, let me see how well my funnel performs. And let me make some estimations about if it performs like this and if I improve it overall by 10%, or if I just improve my sign up to engagement conversion rate by X, or my free to paid conversion, or my demo to POC conversion, whatever it may be. What is the impact of that moving forward? Because if that is your problem, great. Who cares? Your top of funnel is not the problem right now. It may become a problem, but if you do all of this math and say, okay, realistically, I can't make something happen in product better, and really there's a top of funnel problem, great. Now go attack that and now use what you've learned about if it is a top of funnel problem, what channels have people already found me by? Let me start there first and solve that. But again, you got to do the math of growth. And this is what kind of goes back to the earlier question you were asking about why do most startups fail? I think this is post product market fit. If there's a failure, I think it's because the math of growth hasn't been done, along with all of those other problems of not moving fast enough, not learning fast enough, focusing on the wrong areas. And I think all of those are functions of not modeling out your growth, because if you don't model it out, you don't understand where your biggest choke point is. And every business has a choke point. It doesn't matter what else you fix. If you don't fix that, it's game over.
Right. And do you find one area tends to be the most common choke point for most businesses?
Again, for all early startups, I think it is that first experience bit. It's the user activation bit. Everything flows from there. Because I know people like to call it onboarding and activation and first experience. All of that is nothing but short-term retention. Because in the user's brain, I don't think they're thinking about it. They're like, am I using it or not? Am I using it today? Am I using it tomorrow? Am I using it 3 months from now? So I like to break it up to, am I retaining them short term? Am I retaining them medium term? Am I retaining them long term? And all the first experience stuff, I think, falls into that.
Absolutely. A lot of great insight as far as trying to validate a product and grow and scale and doing it in the right order, because otherwise we're going to run into a lot of trouble here. You mentioned earlier AI, and it's been around for a few years, arguably much longer, but now it's in a different space. There's ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude, Grok, OpenAI. AI is being integrated into every app. Many businesses are trying to integrate it into their own product. And you contend that maybe that shouldn't be the focus, trying to stuff it into your product, but rather help improve the efficiencies and operations that you have running in the back end. What are some ways that you're using AI, or do you think other businesses could use AI as well?
Yeah, so I love this question because this is literally the drum I'm beating this year. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't integrate AI into their product, but everybody's doing that. So that's table stakes. And I don't think that is a thing that's going to transform the trajectory of your company, because it's sort of like acquisition. There's no secret AI. Like everybody's using the same foundational models, right? So table stakes there. What is or can be the differentiator is sort of what we touched on earlier, right? It is speed. All things being equal, the one that executes faster will win. And I've noticed this in my own work, that my own speed of execution has gone up, my own decision-making ability has gone up, my ability to visualize and try new things that I might never have thought about has gone up. And when I start to put all of these things into the context of workflows, that's where I think the true power of what moving really fast means starts to come up. And I'll give you a quick, simple example of this from a personal standpoint, which came about talking to somebody else, is literally building an AI agent to auto respond to emails based on certain keywords. And I don't know how to code, right? I'm literally using Google Sheets, a connector like make.com or Zapier, OpenAI like ChatGPT, and Gmail. That's it, nothing fancy. And there's a system that I've almost put into place where I now have a bunch of keywords in a Google Sheet, and I have a bunch of potential responses based on those keywords. Because these are the kind of emails everybody has. This is just a small experiment to get some busy work out of the way so I can do actually stuff that matters and focus on things that matter. It's just
Yeah.
one simple to understand example. Now my system will just look at the email, it'll automatically generate a response and put it in a draft ready for me to approve or change things around, and it will learn based on that. And now start to think about this from a business aspect. How does something like this apply? Like, go back to what we were talking about, talking to customers. Everybody does customer research, but it tends to sit in silos, and then you meet and then you create slides and you have all sorts of meetings. But imagine that you had a workflow that we have a call just like this. There's an otter.ai transcript. Imagine that gets fed directly into ChatGPT. You can do this today. Nothing fancy, nothing. With a prompt that says, okay, analyze this conversation, or here's 100 conversations. Analyze all of these for patterns on competitive intel or product satisfaction or buying intent or whatever it is you want. Prioritize this for me in order of which one will help me sell for the most or fastest, or who to target, or whatever you want, right? And now, without additional work, it generated these insights for me. I can use that to kick off a whole new workflow. This is great. Now generate 20 experiments for me each for a landing page, Google ad, and email sequence, all around the same topic, and give me 20 ideas for things I can test in all of this. This is like half an hour in which all of this will happen, versus imagine what's going to happen in today's world or in yesterday's world. This is weeks and months of work.
It is.
And I think there's a lot of analysis paralysis. I had it too. I still have it because of the noise every week. But I'm just trying to simplify stuff and say, I'm just going to use a few tools and see how far I can take it. I'm not going to get distracted by the noise of everything else. See what I'm doing today, that I can move faster with just 3, 4 tools, and everything centralized around a chat GPT or a Claude, and everyday things. I can use cheap. I'm still on a free plan of make.com.
You don't need an enterprise account to be able to make these APIs and AI agents systems talk to each other.
Totally.
It's huge. I love using AI, and I'm a big fan of using it in workflows as well. The AI generated responses, it can extract keywords and information from the message body. It can interpret that data and it can put it into certain fields. And suddenly it's crafting this personalized response at scale. So usually that would take 5 to 10 minutes to craft, even 30 minutes to really do a nice follow-up email that's personalized. AI, like you said, it can find the transcript from the video. It can interpret and analyze it. It can produce something else. I did an entire year's worth of social media content through ChatGPT because I asked it, in column A, I need a date from now until the end of the year and a time in this format. And it gave me 50 of them. I said, I need post titles. I need this. And it created this Excel sheet for me. All I had to do was take that over to my social media scheduler and upload it. But this is just one of like probably 20 processes I have with like some sort of AI or automation that just helps improve workflows. It's a game changer, and it's helping a lot of solopreneurs get access to these tools that the big box companies only had access to.
Totally. But I think what's implicit in what you said, which I think is maybe part of why some people at least are not finding as much success, is an ability to ask good questions and good follow-ups. Because that many times that initial output isn't really great, and you need to massage it into something, because sometimes it sounds good in theory, but it's never going to work, or it'll use words that like, no, humans don't talk like that, they don't behave like that, right? So the point I'm getting at is, for people who don't know how to ask good questions, I think to me that is a better skill to learn right now, because the output is the output, right? The output is commoditized now. I think it's the input that is more important. And I believe at least one reason why maybe I can ask a better question than some people is because of actual experience doing the thing. So I understand what I'm asking for, and I have a lot of context behind what I'm asking for. So I can see how this might be difficult for newer people trying to do something, because there's just no actual experience. But that doesn't mean you can't go get that experience and just try some of that stuff. Like if you're already trying tools and blah blah on this side, spend some time learning how to test, because even constructing a good hypothesis is an exercise in asking a good question, because the output is binary. And when you don't get a binary output, or you get a fuzzy response, it's a signal to you that I didn't ask the question well, I didn't formulate the hypothesis well. So I think if we all learn to get better at hypothesis, not saying I'm the best at it, I too have to learn and get better at it. But I feel like that is the kernel of it all, is even things we choose to do on a day-to-day basis at work. Don't think of it as a thing I'm doing. Think of it through the lens of a hypothesis. Like, why am I doing this? So if I do expect to see Y, I'll measure it through Z. And I think reframing that lens allows us to get better at asking questions, which then feeds us better into prompts and the like.
Absolutely. Now, where can people find out more about you and get connected with you online?
So I hang out on LinkedIn all the time. I still hang out on X as well. So both places are absolutely fine. I will talk to anybody who wants to nerd out about this stuff.
And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description for everybody. Anuj, our last final question here is anything we haven't talked about today that you would want to share as a piece of advice to any starting entrepreneurs or people who are kind of struggling, spinning their wheels right now? What's the one thing you want them to take home with them?
Get yourself to the spot where you can say, I am smarter this week than I was last week. I promise you, it's a game changer when you can do this week after week. And if you get to this for 4, 6 weeks in a row, start asking yourself that question every 5 days. And if you do that 6, 8 weeks in a row, start asking yourself every 3 days. I promise you, you won't believe how fast you're moving. Like, you won't recognize yourself in 6 months.
I love it. If we can be more active, just put ourselves out there, always be learning, trying to take in new information and be a helpful resource in a lot of communities, a lot of that is going to lead into our success and ultimately leading us to make better decisions. Anuj, we appreciate your time and sharing all your wisdom, tips, and tricks with us for growth hacking and just business scaling. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.